Hey, I was just gonna share a little bit about my labor experience and then as well as my things I look for in a birth center. But basically, labor wise, I went into labor at work actually. I work night shift and it was like 8:30 p.m. and I was sitting at my desk charting and excuse me, all of a sudden I just felt like I was having a period cramp, but like my abdomen was contracting. And backstory, I was only 38 and 2 when I went into labor, like 38 weeks and 2 days. And at 37 and 6, I went to go get my hair cut and I told my husband, I was like, something just feels different today. Like, I'm not sure. I was kind of having Braxton Hicks, but they didn't like feel real. And so I was like, something could be happening. So I kind of had a feeling this next week something was going to happen, whatever that was. But anyway, so I'm at work and I'm like, oh, this might be happening. And so I just kind of watched them throughout the shift because I wasn't sure if they were just Braxton Hicks, if this was actual labor, because I know sometimes that early you can like do that for a while. And so throughout the shift, they progressively got worse and way close together. They started like 15 minutes apart, then got to 10 minutes apart. And then by the end of the shift, they were 7 minutes apart and they were definitely getting worse. And so in a couple of working, like a couple of the rooms that I went into, I was like, I could like feel it and I was getting a little pale and my coworkers was like, you don't look so well. But I stayed basically until 5:30 that morning and then I went home. And when I got home, I tried to take a nap because I had been up all night, but they started getting progressively worse. So I just did a whole lot of movement. Like I tried to have the most normal day as possible that I would normally have on like my day off after I've worked a 3 in a row. And so I took a nap and then I woke up and I did like a little mini workout. We did a bunch of like my husband and I curb walking throughout the neighborhood. I was on my ball a lot just watching TV, and as the contractions got worse, I kind of just tried to treat them like one at a time. I tried not to think about how many were coming or for how long they were coming because I knew that was going to overwhelm me. So what I did would be like, okay, I can do anything for a minute to a minute and a half. Once this one's over, I'm going to completely like act like nothing's happening, like watch TV, talk to my husband, do whatever activity I was doing. And I really think that helped me because I ended up being in labor for almost 48 hours. So Saturday, that's basically what I did, is just tried to have the most normal day. And when I needed to stop and breathe, I stopped and breathed in between them. And I did the whole counting where it's like, you breathe in, breathe out, and you do that for 5 in, 5 out. And I just did that through most of them, and it was pretty fine. But by the end of Saturday night, they were like 3 to 5 minutes apart, and the intensity was definitely worse. So I went ahead and went to the birth center to get checked because I just kind of wanted to see where I was at, because I know that like, yes, they were getting worse and stuff, but I didn't really know. It felt like really early labor, which just means like your body's trying to do something, but it's like not fully there, and my water had not broke yet. So I went and got checked. And so what the different measurements mean, so like 3 centimeters is how dilated your cervix is, and then the middle numbers can be like 50, 60, 60 to 70. Those are a face, so like how thin it is. And then the station, which is like -2, -1, 0, +1, +2, is how like low your baby is. And so Miss Kinsley was so high they couldn't give me a station, so basically she wasn't really engaged at all. So I was like 50 to 60 a face and only 3 dilated Saturday night. So we came back home and I tried to sleep through most of the night, and I woke up at 3 a.m. in so much pain. I was like, oh, this is really happening. They were like 2 to 3 minutes apart, pretty intense. And so I took Mr. Blaze right there with me and we went to the living room, and I was watching Reba at the time. So I turned the TV on, and Bridgerton. So I finished Bridgerton and then watched Reba. And so in between the contractions, I would just watch the TV. And then during the contractions, I would breathe through and watch. And that's just what helped me the most. I tried to listen to music, but at that time it just wasn't helping. So I just watched the TV show until Jared woke up. And then around 6 a.m., I woke him up and I was like, listen, I'm hurting pretty bad. I'm going to give it an hour. I ended up like on my hands and knees in our room in here, like crying. It was hurting so bad at that point. But I knew that like I was making another big progress. So I was kind of curious at what I was at. And so we went in so now it's Sunday morning. So I went into labor Friday night. It's now Sunday morning, and we went ahead and got checked at like 7. I was now a 5, 80% -2. So she moved a lot, which was really nice. But our midwife kind of was like, hey, you don't live too far. Like, go back home. You're going to be so much more comfortable at home. Go load up on carbs. And so we went and got IHOP Sunday morning, the morning, like the day of the morning Kinsley was born. We ate IHOP. And so I was eating IHOP, going through contraction, eating IHOP on my hands and knees, about to cry, eating IHOP, and then watching TV. And so I would just like do that, talk to my husband in between. And then I did a lot of positions to try to get her to drop because I did not want to have to labor that long. And so I did a lot of like hands and knees laboring. I did a lot of like on my ball. I did a couple where you like lay sideways and you put a ball. I used our exercise ball, but a lot of times in the hospital they use like peanut balls. I put the peanut ball between my legs and kind of laid where my back was arched, like laying down and my legs were backwards to try to help get her to drop. And then I attempted to take a nap, and so I just took my whole body and like my right leg over this way. So like if these are my legs, I laid like with some pillows stacked up like this to also try to get her to move. But then it was starting to get too like painful to lay down for that long, and so I labored in the shower for a little bit, which highly recommend. It was very nice. Warm water is amazing. And I have these little like eucalyptus smelly things, so I put one of those in there to help relax and just labored in there for like an hour. Got back in bed, and that's when I started to feel really shaky. So usually when you transition, a lot of people describe it as you almost feel like you're getting sick. So some people start vomiting, some people shake, some people don't feel it, but most of the time you do. And so I started feeling like very shaky, kind of like I had the flu, full body chills. And I got back in bed and called my husband. I was like, can you come lay in here with me? And throughout this whole thing, like the midwife had been texting me and kind of keeping up to date with things, but I really wanted to spend the most amount of time at home as I possibly could. And so by that point, my husband could see it in my face, and our midwife called and she was like, how are you doing? I was like, I'm okay. And my husband was fine, like, hey, I think it's time for us to go. And so we went ahead and drove to the birth center. And by this time, so she called me at 1, we were there by 2. By the time I got there, they were pretty bad. That car ride, it's like 25-ish minutes to the birth center. The first 2 times it was not as bad. This last time, oh my gosh. Let me tell you, contractions in the car, not fun because you can't move as much. And so I was just trying to breathe through those as much as possible. And then we got to the birth center and I went ahead and got checked. So it was around 2:30 and I was 7, almost 100% effaced and -1 now. So she had dropped a lot and I had made a lot of progress, which was really awesome. So I knew like, hey, we got to stay, we got our bags. We picked the room that we were gonna have her in, and it was like, oh, this is really happening, like we're having her today. And so we got everything set up. The midwife really encouraged me to do lunges up and down the stairs just because it helps engage your baby. And so I did some lunges up and down, and then by that time I was really hurting, so I was like, can we get the tub warmed up? Because I always wanted to have a water birth. So she heated up the tub, and I did some like laboring in the tub as well. And I kind of viewed it as I knew the positions that hurt the most were probably doing the most progress. So anytime a position was like, this is a lot, I knew it was probably engaging baby the way they needed to. So I spent a lot of time with my like, I wasn't on my hands and knees in the tub. I had like my hands up here and my legs down, if that makes sense. And kind of had my legs spread open, kind of like a frog, to like help open up my pelvis to give baby more room. So I did that, and then I would alternate and get out of the tub because you want to make sure you're moving. So I got out of the tub onto my exercise ball and like bounced on that for a while and did little hip circles and all that kind of stuff because that's also really great to engage baby. And then the last place I labored in was the toilet. I know that sounds gross, but your body, your muscle-mind connection on the toilet is already there because you have to relax to use the bathroom. And so for a lot of people, laboring on the toilet, doesn't feel very good. It's very painful, but it really helps with that mind-body connection to relax. And so I got on the toilet and actually my water broke there. And so by this time it was probably like 4 o'clock. So I'd been laboring maybe an hour and a half, switching in between the tub. Throughout the whole process, the midwife is using a Doppler, which helps you hear baby's heart rate every 30 minutes. So at the birth center, they don't like watch strips like they do at the hospital where you have the 2 little things on your belly and they can like see it. They just do a Doppler to track your heart rate. So she was doing that every 30 minutes, and thankfully Kinsley was tolerating it really well. So my water broke on the toilet at like 4-ish, 4:10-ish. And then all of a sudden I felt the urge to push. I asked her to check me, and I was only like an 8, 100% like 0 station. So baby had really dropped down, but I like felt the urge to push. And so I tried to fight it for a little bit because she said, just breathe through them. If you can not push, give your body more time. But if you're like if you're really fighting yourself and you're still pushing, that means you need to just let your body do what it needs to do. So after about 5 to 6 minutes of trying to fight it, I was like, I cannot fight this anymore. So my midwife checked me and I was 100%, like 10 centimeters, 100% +1. And so that means baby was really close. And so she was like, do you want to feel the head? I was like, no, I'm okay. Cause I couldn't really like, sounds gross, but I couldn't really tell down there like what was what. So I tried to feel, but I didn't really know. And so I flipped back over and started pushing where I wasn't full on hands and knees, but I was like my hands on top of the tub and then my knees were like open at the back. And so that's how I pushed. And so from when the water broke to when she came out, she was born at 4:42 p.m. So my water broke at like 4:10. So it was like 30-ish minutes of going from like 8 to complete to pushing, and she was out. And the whole time I was pushing, this is kind of gross, the only way I can explain this is that it feels like you have to poop really bad. And you know those times where it's like so bad that you have to poop that you just keep, like your body just keeps pushing for you and you're not even trying, is how that feels, but like 10 times more like powerful. And so I was just letting my body do its thing. In between like pushes, I would wait for contraction to really push, even though my body did like most of the work. And then in between, I would just focus on keeping pressure down there, just because I wanted to keep her engaged as much as possible. And so I did that. And thankfully, I also did a lot of like core strength and strengthening for everything to help with pushing, because I didn't want it to have to take too long. So yeah, so I was able to get her out like 30 minutes-ish after my water broke, which was really great. And then she came out, which this part is like everything I always dreamed of, but it still almost feels like a little bit of a blur because it happened so fast. But my husband got to catch her, so where I was positioned, it was kind of funny. She was like, do you want to catch your baby? I was like, I don't know where you are. For some reason, I thought they were in a spot that I like couldn't get to her. So anyway, my husband got to catch her. So he caught her, and then we kind of rolled together onto her back, and she laid like right on here for me. And at the birth center, one of the things I also wanted to do this for was because they do a lot of like the first hour skin to skin, really long delayed cord clamping. Those are all things that I really wanted. And so Kinsley just laid on my chest. They checked on her, make sure her vitals were okay. And then she was actually really quiet when she came out, and like not the pinkest. She was pretty blue, but it's normal for babies and it takes them a little bit sometimes to kind of get going. And so after about a minute, she was looking better. And then by 5 minutes, she was like pink and beautiful and everything. So we stayed in for a tub a little bit, and then they moved me to the bed with her still attached. And the placenta was delivered in the bed. And then they do it where they take the placenta and put it in a little bucket and cover it so you don't have to see it. And we did an hour of delayed cord clamping. So why she was on my chest on the bed, Jarrett, my husband, was next to me, and we just did like lots of skin to skin. They rubbed my belly to make sure my uterus is nice and firm, to check my bleeding, checked vitals on her, checked my vitals. And then after an hour, Jared got to cut the cord, and he did skin to skin with her while I got back in the bathtub, because there they do this really cool herbal bath to help with healing and everything. And then after you've been in it for a little while, since it's warm enough, baby gets in there with you. So Kinsley was up on my chest while we were taking this bath, and then that's where she breastfed for the first time, so we fed in there. Once she was done eating, I got dressed, got back in the bed, and it was really nice. Like, we just hung out. I was only there for 4 hours, which was kind of cool. So at the birth center, you can do 4 to 6 hours depending on how you're doing, and they give you tons of education to what to look for, so you know what to do when you go home, like if something happens. And so we got to just stay and like hang out and chat, and they brought me like a little poppy to drink, and I had my little factor meal ready to eat after. And so it was really nice, and we just kind of hung out and enjoyed like getting to have her. And it was really the birth that I had always prayed for. I'm extremely lucky that I was a low risk delivery. My pregnancy was really great, and my delivery went really well. Like, I'm very grateful for all those things, because I know that doesn't happen for everyone. And so I'm incredibly thankful for like God just looking out for me and for the way my birth went, because I know that's not the case for everyone. And I can't say enough how grateful I am to have gotten the birth that I wanted, because it's just not the case for everyone. So very grateful that I did it that way too. It was just smooth, and like the lights were dim in the room, and she's swimming around in there in fluid. And so I feel like it was a very like calming way for her to come out in the world, into the water, into low like stimulus, getting to just be with me for a little while. And she's honestly the best baby. She is so sweet. She's so smiley, she's so calm, and I like to think that some of that comes from like just the delivery process as well. So that's my labor story. Went into labor at work, almost labored for 48 hours, but I would do it again in a heartbeat, and I plan for our next baby to have our baby at a birth center as well. And so I'm really grateful I did it, and it's been really it's been really cool to look back on and see the pictures after I finally like processed through everything, because right when she came out, it took me a while to be like, oh, this really just happened. And I had been in game mode for so long that I like was coming off kind of a high, and then I feel like at 4 days I finally like fully came off of it. So but yeah, that's my birth story. And then as far as like picking stuff for birth centers, so you want to make sure that you ask about hemorrhage medications, which just means like in case you start bleeding, do they have the stuff there available to help stabilize you. Like if you hemorrhage really bad, you would have to be transferred to a hospital, so you want to make sure they have medication that can keep you stable while you get there. And then also, what is their policy on transferring? Like if you're bleeding but not that bad, what medications can they give and what does that look like? You also want to ask about the stuff they have for baby as far as like oxygen stuff goes. So if baby comes out and is not doing well, what do they have to help make sure that baby's okay and to stabilize baby on your way if you need to go to the hospital for the NICU. And so you want to ask about that. Transfer rates, some birth centers have really bad transfer rates, which just means people get transferred a lot. Some birth centers have better transfer rates. And so you want to look into that too, because that's really important. That tells a lot. I asked about tearing as well, which I had barely a first degree that didn't need to be repaired, so I'm very grateful for that. But ask about tearing because that is a sign as well. It's not like the biggest thing, but it's important to talk to them about that too. Like, what does that look like? How do you repair it? Because some birth centers won't repair certain levels of tears, because you can have like a first degree all the way through a fourth degree, where usually a lot of birth centers, third and fourth degrees, you have to go to the hospital to get repaired. So you want to make sure you're asking about that. And then you want to ask about how you would get to the hospital and how far away the hospital was. So the one that I chose had a major hospital only 3 blocks away, which is also part of the reason I chose it, because I knew in an emergency we would get care really fast. You also want to ask about like what they're comfortable taking. So some birth centers will deliver like breech deliveries, which means your baby's flipped the other way, where their like booty's down there instead of their head. And some people will deliver twins, some birth centers won't. And so the birth center I chose had a very precise list of like, once you hit this, we like can't take you. But with the hospital, they had more privileges, the midwives did, so they would be able to help out in my delivery, which is also why I picked it. So if I did go high risk, I knew I could still have the midwives in my care. But that's an important one, because you want to make sure you have the care that you want wherever you end up, and you want to make sure you have midwives who know their limits, because there are certain things that like you just need to be in a hospital for, and I liked that they were like that, but they also were experienced enough where if I wanted to try to have a breech vaginal delivery, I could, which doesn't happen everywhere. It means it's a really long labor. There's more like risk associated with it, but they were willing to try, which I really liked, because it gave me an option instead of just having to be a straight C-section, that I could give a vaginal delivery a shot. And then I also like toured multiple birth centers. You want to go tour and make sure you feel comfortable and safe there, because ultimately you're going to have your baby there and you're going to remember it. And you want a place that makes you feel calm and confident and at peace. And so make sure you go tour and actually visit. You can also ask about like care. I know my birth center, as far as ultrasounds go, we just did a first trimester and a like anatomy scan at like the halfway mark, and you have the option of doing a third one or not. And so I like that as well, like getting the choice for it. If you want more ultrasounds, you could do more. If you want less, you can do less. And so I would just make sure that you're asking your place about that too, about like tests, those things, as well as cost. So a lot of birth centers don't take insurance, and so I would always suggest talking to them about what the cost looks like, what that looks like, paying out of pocket, getting reimbursed by insurance, because it can be really expensive, but in my opinion, it is really worth it if it's something that you feel like you want to do. Totally worth the cost of it. And sometimes, depending on where you go, it can be like less expensive in a sense of like the whole care. So like you pay a certain price, at least where I was at, for like all your postpartum care plus your like delivery itself. So and then you can ask about like what happens once you get transferred to the hospital, like what steps take place, how long will they be there. And then another big thing you want to ask about is, so some birth centers have like if your water breaks and then you don't have a baby for like 3 or 4 days, some birth centers after a certain amount of time, like 36 hours, will recommend transferring, or they will have you transfer. And so I was asking like, how much time do I have before I have to go to the hospital if my water breaks and baby doesn't come, because you're more at risk for infections and other things when you're ruptured for a long time. And so you want to make sure that you ask about that too. I wanted a place that was going to give me more time than less time. So their policy on it was they didn't really have like a certain amount of time unless your vitals started showing you were getting sick or baby was getting distressed, which I liked because I wanted to have the option. You also want to ask about if your group strep B, which is GBS, is positive in pregnancy, what the antibiotic policy is there. I like having a choice for antibiotics or not. Where some birth centers in some places make you get antibiotics. So you always want to ask what that policy is, how they would do that, what that looks like. And those are the main things that I wanted to be at. Let's see. I feel like there is one more thing. Oh, I wanted to know kind of what the birth certificate policy looks like, because I know in the hospitals they have like birth certificate people that would come. So make sure you're checking on like how getting the birth certificate works, what your postpartum care is, what their policy is for postpartum, how long your stay is after you have baby. So my birth center was 4 hours, and then if you wanted more time, you would pay for like an extra 2 hours there. But thankfully, the field of work that I work in, like I understand a lot of the postpartum care, so that was really nice. But they did a great job with their packets of education, and if you didn't know those things, they educate really well. So I wanted to make sure I had someone too who was going to educate me on what to look for, what was normal. And then they also offer the ability to come to your house for your follow-up visits. So that's another thing, is usually you get an appointment with your pediatrician when you get discharged within a certain amount of time. And so I wanted to know what their process was for like follow-ups with babies, which they did a 2 to 3 day, which they could have come to my house if I didn't want to go up there, which was really cool. So they did a 2 to 3 day visit, a 2-week visit, a 4-week visit, and a 6-week visit, which I like that they did more follow-up visits than just one 6-week. That was something I was really interested in, just to check on my mental health, my body. And I ended up getting like an IV hydration on my 2 to 3 day follow-up because I felt terrible. I felt like I got hit by a bus, not gonna lie. And since I had like nausea, diarrhea, headaches, I was so fatigued, and so they also offered like IVs, which I really liked, for the option to get hydration and stuff. Another big thing I wanted was supplements. I wanted a place where my prenatal care they were going to give me natural remedies first before medications, because I really didn't want to take anything. And so I also asked about that and looked for that in a place where, what was it going to be if I had nausea? What were they going to tell me? Or if I had hemorrhoids, what were they going to tell me? Can I buy the supplements in their place? Which at this place they could, and those were big things for me. Same with postpartum. Like, they gave me a huge paper of all the things to do in pregnancy and postpartum, like if I had hemorrhoids or constipation and stuff like that, like natural remedies for those that I could actually purchase at the birth center. So that was huge for me as well. So, but yeah, that's really the main stuff that I looked for. Just make sure you find somewhere comfortable, somewhere that you and your partner are comfortable with, somewhere you feel confident, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because these people are here for you to have a birthday and take care of you. And so you're never bothering people when you ask them questions. You are an advocate for your own health. So like, ask those questions. Be that person that's like, well, what is this, and why do you do this, and what happens, what do you do if this happens? Because it is important, especially outside of the hospital. Our bodies were made to do this, and people have been giving birth outside of hospitals for like thousands of years. But with the help of modern medicine, there is some cool stuff that they can help with. But if you want to do this at a birth center or at home, just make sure you ask the good questions. In case of hemorrhaging, or in case you get sick, like what do those things look like? Because it is important to know, also just for your own like safety, and knowing in your brain like, okay, there's a plan in case these things happen. So, but anyway, thank you guys. This is a longer one. I hope you guys enjoy. We'll see if it's not fuzzy this time. It probably is going to be. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening.